How's Climate Week been for you otherwise?
Me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Busy. I mean, lots of events. I think one I've been now in New York 3 years, and I remember 3 years ago it was a small community. And I think what was exciting to see is like New York community has grown dramatically, but also you have folks from all over the US. So I'm glad to see the enthusiasm around climate tech and just climate issues for folks to be interested to work in and be curious about from all walks of life. So that definitely was a highlight. So yeah, it's cool.
Sure. Yeah, that's a big one. I know SF San Francisco did Climate Week too, and I was there for a couple of events, and we spoke at a few, which is a lot more, I think, tech and climate focused. I could see that difference very quickly, but comparing that Climate Week to New York, where New York was also tech, I'm sure. I did see it sprinkled across a few of the days and a few of the questions, but I think there's definitely a bigger emphasis and focus on policy, even higher level topics, which is part of that blend, right? You kind of need the blend of both policy and tech and tooling and programming to kind of work harmoniously to really create impact. So I think it's good to see that part of the discussion also happening here. And we're lucky, I think we get to see both sides of it and work in the tech world and see the climate conversation. So I think that was pretty good. Was there one standout event for you from the ones that either even if you didn't attend it, or one that stood out from like, oh, this is interesting, or this is the first time you're seeing something like that?
Good question. So I think I went to this climate networking thing that happened in Brooklyn Paramount, which is a huge theater, and it was fully packed. That was exciting just to see so much energy and so many people here. But I also went to like a climate financing, which is more technical, given more relevant for our business. So that also was great to see from the big institutions, the big banks to smaller, interesting fintech players all attending and really sharing their wisdom and knowledge from the classic finance world and how we can apply that to continue to push forward with a more sustainable future across all different types of renewables to what we do with assets and vehicles and all that. So that was a lot more insightful as well. But yeah, I mean, um, you know, I'm happy and okay with the few that attended, but I'm sure I missed quite a few as well.
I see. That's good. That's pretty fun. Okay, I think we have Morgan in here as well now. We're just trying to get her video to turn back on, and then we should be good to go. Oh, there we go.
Hi.
Hello, hello. Welcome back.
I have audio on two places, so if there's an echo. Oh, I've been hearing you the whole time, but you admitted me
All good.
and muted all participants, so we're good.
All good, all good. No, we're excited to have you. This is great. Yeah, I was just catching up with Chinmay a little bit and getting a little bit of a backgrounder on Climate Week. We know this is actually maybe the last the grand finale to the Climate Week events, at least part of their official calendar. And they gave us a little nudge as well to make sure we know that. So we're excited to help top it off with maybe the best event or best conversation that folks have had. But I was trying to get a peek of the highlight that Chinmay has seen also from his experience in Climate Week. But I'm sure it's been pretty nice for you too. Awesome. Well, we started a little bit behind, so we'll get things moving. We have folks on the panel with us. I think let's just do a quick round of introductions and kind of a little bit on the background context for how we're relevant to this conversation. Sustainability. I think it obviously impacts everybody on Earth, but how are we more directly tied into that topic? So I'll let you guys kind of start off. Maybe Mario, you can kick us off with a quick mini intro, and then Chinmay, and then I'll do that last one too.
Sounds good. My name is Morgan, the CEO of PeakHR. It's
Oh, I think you're
a
in a
learning
good
and
job.
training development for. Am I lagging?
A little bit, but I think it's back on. Here, go for it. Go for it again.
All right, my name is Morgan Williams. I'm the CEO of PeakHR, and one portion of it is training for progressive HR professionals, and the other portion is fractional HR.
Perfect.
I'll leave it there.
That was perfect.
Awesome.
Chinmay, do you want to go? Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks. Great meeting you all. My name is Chinmay. I'm the co-founder CEO of Ridepanda. At Ridepanda, what we do, we offer a curated selection of electric bikes, pedal bike, scooters at a subscription price that employers can offer to their employees as part of their commuter benefits. And we offer cargo bikes, pedal bikes, step-through bikes, mountain bikes, all of the above that connects with employees' different use cases, demographics, how often they ride, how long they want to ride, where do they live, etc. And the reasons why employers are excited about us and working with us is to get people back to work in a more sustainable manner, in a more flexible manner, encourage health and wellness, given they can exercise to work, decompress after work, and also help them in many cases, reduce their parking and costs and all of that as well. And we work with tech employers, city governments, law firms, and excited to continue to expand with more and more employers.
Awesome. That's perfect. You even revealed some of the answers that we were gonna unlock later, but we will get to get some hints dropping already. That's perfect. And as you can tell, they don't directly work with pandas yet, but that's part of their expansion strategy. No, it's great, and it's a very important aspect. I think bikes and scooters are a huge enabler as well in today's world, and everyone's trying to figure out how to make good use of them and to make them more effective. I'm Shaurya, the founder of Fleet, and we're super excited to have both Chinmay and Morgan coming in here to have a conversation with us. We're at Fleet, we work with employers as well, specifically around commuting, and how we can make that a bit more sustainable through better programming and better incentives and better access to great resources, including bikes and scooters like Chinmay is bringing up, and other transit options, et cetera, too. But a big part of what all three of us do is often interact with HR leaders and teams and workplace teams, specifically around how they're thinking about their employees and where things fit into the grander picture, right? And this is something Morgan's been doing for a long time, and also folks that you've been talking to, both as clients but also within the network. Same with Chinmay and myself, we often have to think about kind of where the bigger picture is and where we're kind of fitting in. So I think to kick us off a little bit, kind of lay the groundwork on kind of how we really think about like sustainability culture, right? If we're talking about the HR realm within this conversation of sustainability, what is really like sustainability culture? We know culture is pretty important. It's often seen as the DNA of a business, and HR is often the key party responsible for helming that culture, fostering it, and making sure it is the right culture that the company wants. And it is part of the job to make sure that that is permeated and accessible by everybody. How does that? I think we'll start with Morgan. You get your thoughts on this and kind of spin from there. But how does sustainability, as sort of this concept that we know touches everybody, how does that really kind of fit in the framework of team culture, right? What is that? Is that something that is integral to team culture? Does it need to become part of the DNA? Like what's a good framework for how HR leaders should be thinking about sustainability in the first place? Oh no, we lost your audio here. I can tell some great comments were coming in.
Is this better?
Yep, you're back on. Perfect.
Okay, what I was going to say, I think a big portion of it is this isn't something you do in a vacuum. This is something where you really want your teams inside on. You want to understand who is your like ICP when we're thinking about who do we want to engage. because I think this is something you can tie and wrap around your culture. You can wrap around your mission, your vision, your values. So doing this in a vacuum isn't helpful.
Mhm.
And I think the way that you can also excite and get your people on board is getting their opinions. And I think that's the first place to start. I think a lot of people want to start legally. They want to start, something in the community that they've seen. But at the end of the day, if you're still trying to get engagement, you're going to want to make sure that you think about your employees and how they fall into this whole picture.
Mm. No, that's pretty important. Yeah, I think kind of like the concept of how we can use this to wrap it around things. I think you're kind of alluding to this thing that we also briefly touched on before, but we've seen companies at least outside in create those ideas of, hey, we have a sustainability page on our website, right? Or we have a commitment at a cosmetic level, right? Chinmay, have you seen in conversations that you've had with folks where even, let's say, that cosmetic aspect of things, like, hey, we've talked about it publicly before, we're not even talking about internal culture yet. Like, if they've mentioned something at the top, has that come in conversations that you've had with HR folks, and what is their like HR stance on something like that, where the company has maybe publicly taken a sustainability stance?
I think I mean, I am glad to see like leaders at large enterprises take an opinion, take a stand, and say they care about sustainability, right? I think it, of course, is a good first step. It is not everything, right? It's like, okay, I care about it. I believe in it. We want to support this. Now, what do you do next, right? How do you communicate that internally to your employees in various different initiatives? How do you also communicate it externally with your customers, clients, in terms of how much you care about it? And so, of course, we are a part of the puzzle, but we, of course, are not everything. When you look at commute, it's a direct experience for many employees. Employees are asking questions around how do I change that? How do I be more sustainable? And that's where the conversation comes in. But I think you are 100% right. I think setting the tone, setting the commitment is important. But I think where I also sometimes struggle with is that is also not job done, right? That is just the first step. And I think that is also very, very crucial if you want to move ahead. Press releases, while being a little expensive, but also very cheap, right? Off you go, but doesn't necessarily redeem you from action, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. I'm sure this is kind of what I was talking about when we started the conversation with Morgan too. I think this is exactly what you're referring to, where fostering an actual cultural change is not just about wrapping things up. We're here in this case, like what Chinmay is pointing out. This could be at one point in time. We've made a commitment. We've done a target. We've done something where it's a big thing to have that commitment publicly exposed as well and shared. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot. Like, it is still very easy to make a commitment unless you have that follow through, and that's tough, right? Doing the follow through is the hard part, right? Like, deciding I want to do something, even personally, right? Even look at our own personal lives, deciding I want to do something is a bit easier to say and commit to than to walk that talk and actually see, can I, do it? What I'm actually going to do. And like, you work with a lot of HR folks on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, juggling things. Like, fostering any part of culture seems hard as an HR, right? Like, we're all actually founders and CEOs as well, right? Even internally, and have our own teams that we're also fostering a culture with. We know how hard it is to amalgamate different aspects of culture into a one cohesive understanding and DNA, like you're saying, right? There's only DNA is a single thing that exists, and it's a combination of so many things. um is that, thinking through how we can pull the sustainability aspect into the culture as well, is that, in terms of fostering that culture and how we can put it into positioning, um is that something that you've oh no, I think we lost her. Well, I was gonna bring that exact point up on, how we know fostering anything is very difficult. But then thinking about, now I want to also bring this new variable of sustainability that we've discussed into the mix. Welcome back. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to speak. Sorry, having internet issues, apologize. I think this is something I've been thinking about a lot, about culture. Are you losing me or no?
You're back in now. This is something you've
Okay.
been
And
thinking a lot about.
yeah, and I think it's a lot bigger than just the policy portion. I think we need to really think Asheville is a great example that's happening currently right now. How are we taking care of those employees? What does that mean? Is our recruitment process flexible? It's not just about what we see and how we can contribute in gifting or using recyclable cups or swag. It's also the true impacts of climate and
Mm,
how we're working towards that. What does that mean for our employees? What does that mean towards our company? And how are we contributing or eliminating it?
yeah.
I think we have to get really granular there. I think we've been big thought process, but these things are happening quickly more often, and we have no policies or rules. Are people using their sick time? Do we have climate change leave? What does that mean for people? How do people get paid? How are we
Mm,
assisting them? And I think we've never really touched that point. And I think it's a huge point. I bring up Asheville because it's supposed to be in a climate safe space. So what if you're already in a climate place that's already changing drastically? If this is what's happening in the places that are safe, we're in trouble without having any governance and no thought processes. Also, how can we do this equitably?
mm,
Are we going to change things for California wildfires or the flooding and hurricanes in Florida? But what about the droughts in Ecuador? Like, how do we treat this? Where's the consistency? And I think that's where you really have to get down to because that's what contributes to the culture. That's where people can see themselves. And that's where they can also understand if they're a priority or how you really view this. Am I part of the team? Or as soon
yeah.
as my house is done from a flood, I'm not working, so you're over it. Like, how do we govern that?
Yeah. No, this is awesome. That's a very important kind of uh, framework of mindful that I think only is unique to HR as a function too, which I think HR leaders are forced to think about these problems, which is good, because you do need someone dedicated with the experience and background to put it in. And I think the core point you're touching on too, there is a strong level of influence that employers can have on employees, right? On the people that they interact with, and that's just a matter of fact of we spend most of our waking hours at work, right, and with our colleagues, and that environment and what I do there, and even subtle decisions that I'm making there are influenced a lot by what has been made available to me, what has been enabled by my HR, by my employer, by my team, and kind of like creating that environment. I think you're absolutely right. I think that influence is a big one. There is a clear idea that employers can have a strong influence in helping people think through these things, and it goes across the board, not just sustainability, which is obviously the big topic of mind for us coming right out of this climate week, but like you mentioned, even equitability. I think equity is a huge issue across the board, especially for sustainability too, right? I think that's also a big issue of thinking through, what does sustainable habit mean across the board for different folks in HR or different folks on a team, right? Sustainability for leaders and senior folks is different than sustainability for people at the desks every day versus people who are even coming in as staff, the essential workers that are part of your company, and even cleaners to that extent, right? It is different. Some people can afford to be more sustainable in different ways, and some people find other ways to do it. So I think equity and sustainability is also a very huge um, balancing act, and a tough problem to tackle. But at the crux of it, I think employee engagement is very important to your point, right? That is something that has to be taken into account. How can you really get, interacting with the employees on sort of that basis. Chinmay, in your experience too, kind of thinking through this quick aspect of the influence that employers have on habits and employee experiences and engagement, right? Obviously, you're also helping people find great ways to commute and help them realize that, biking is an option for me, but you realize that you also need the employer to showcase that in some way, or support it and be part of that conversation, right? You can't just go straight to people know bikes exist. As a consumer, I can go, I see people biking, I've seen that, but you are seeing something around that influence that an employer can have on sort of the employee engagement aspect as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, Shaurya, I will just echo, right, what you just said. Like, bikes are something that everybody's familiar with, right? But is everybody riding them is a different question, right? And as you know, for the latter, it's no, right? So there are, of course, barriers, right? Electric bikes can be expensive. If you look at our business, I'll just double click on Ridepanda, or which one do I buy? What about support? What about insurance? There are so many different challenges, right? For a novice to embrace this as a commute option. And this is where employers can come in. They can help curate a selection for their employees. They can financially incentivize their employees. They can create certain budgets and trainings for their employees. And that goes a long way in terms of incentivizing or recommending a behavior, right? Which is ideally a long-term behavioral change towards a sustainable, healthier, fun, in Ridepanda's case, commute alternative that can get people back to work in a more flexible manner. And I think employers do play a bigger role, right? And around nudging and incentivizing, recommending certain behaviors that align culturally or systematically to their bigger goals. And I think we, of course, are a part of that, right? And I think, and just double clicking on Ridepanda's data, half of our riders are actually new to biking, right? They're not folks who already had a bike and they got a second bike from us. They are new to biking because of our subscription program, which is very flexible, but also very importantly, employers suggesting and recommending that path to their employees, and also financially subsidizing that as well. So removing that barrier as well. And jointly, we are able to achieve that result. So and that is, I think, we will expect employers to continue to play a very, very important role towards that.
That's awesome. No, it's good to hear. I'm sure that's stuff we're tracking in general, right? I think we're coming in from a transportation specific vertical of sustainability, obviously, which we all know is the single largest contributor emission wise, and even in the US. But I think what you just mentioned is perfect. Like, the idea that, to totally underscore what we're talking about, that employers do have an influence on employee habits and influencing them through engagement. You're seeing people create a brand new habit for the first time and they're biking, and that's a stat that we love to also talk about and advertise and really kind of track very closely, like how many folks are doing this. And a big part of, I think, what the HR role is exactly that. Sometimes you're coming up with new things to work on, like sustainability is a whole new realm of that. Like, what are new initiatives and ideas we can do to bring sustainability into my team, into my culture, into our day-to-day practices. But a big part, I think, of the HR role, and Morgan, you can second on this or completely flip it out. But a big part of also what the HR role is really to bring things that also already exist or are understood by people in front of folks, right? And kind of having that level of access of information and awareness as well. Like, some of the times, like, we're coming up with new stuff, but a lot of the times it's really like, hey, how can we help them learn about things more easily and learn about things? But we saw, like what Chinmay is mentioning about biking, like bikes have existed for a long time. And then getting HR to be like, hey, this is something we can help you understand better. And we see the exact same thing on, commuter benefits and transit passes and other ways. It's everyone's known about them. It's like, oh yeah, I remember this thing, or I've seen people use it now and then, but not really, being able to see it and have that level of awareness. Hey, this actually does work, and it's actually pretty easy to use, and it can actually help me and affect me personally and also environmentally. Like, why do those two have to be separate, right? Like, can we not take decisions that are better for us but are also environmentally conscious we're lucky in the commuting world. That's very true. Most things that are, environmentally beneficial are also end up being cheaper, also end up being, a better experience than just getting stuck behind the wheel. So we're fortunate that our entire industry is heading that way. But to your point, I'd love to get your take on how, like, that's a big part of what they need to do: get things together, communicate, and make that awareness happen. And that's part of the same problem that they're facing with sustainability as a whole, right? For initiatives, whether it's new initiatives or making people aware of what they can do.
Yeah, I think there's two components that kind of go along with this. And what I would say about that is when employees are first onboarded into a company, they get a massive amount of data. And in that data, it's commuter benefits, and that data is EAP, and that data is all of these things that it's like, oh, you can go back to it later because we want you to have it day one. But I think we have to treat, sustainability almost like we do with the heritage months, or so to speak, that you celebrate. Yes, you have this celebration, i.e. Climate Tech Week. You know what I'm saying? Like you can celebrate it then. But it's something that you should be incrementally continuously working on and reminding employees about these. I know something that I used to do was anytime that there was kind of like a natural disaster, remind people that they had access to EAP and keep that cord going. So it's like, hey, if you need anything, these are people that can help you in this time. And I think that it's like that little note or that extra PDF that you can kind of add to a message minimum instead of saying, hey, we're aware of this. Okay, we're aware of this, but we also have things that can help you. Don't forget your tools. And I think that's how we have to think about it. When I think about kind of the heritage months and how we celebrate them, but for instance, I'll use Black History Month for an example. Yes, it has a month and we go through that, but throughout the course of the employee's time, we're looking at, celebrating their anniversaries. We're looking at celebrating, the things that are unique to their culture. We're doing pay equity studies, or like we should be. And so those are all of the things that go along with that. So when we have the celebration, we can actually have the celebration. I think we have to think about this in a same way. Think about what are the tools, and not only just sending them the PDF, but talking about how it's useful, and also talking about if you can get, how much carbon you're saving or doing this. You can create challenges. You can create so many different things in here to show this is actually the impact you're making when you do this one simple thing that you already have access to. People love to feel like they're making an impact. The more we can remind them of those impacts that they're making, the more likely they'll continue to do them. And I think if we can show what it's repurposing or what it's being able to build or helpful, then people feel like they're actually contributing to something and it can fulfill their purposes in a very, very, very different way. So it's not those micro things that you're just kind of like doing on the flip end, or it's Climate Week, we're doing a big celebration. It's not that. How are we thinking about this literally every day, every employee, integrated with our mission, integrated with our vision, integrated with our values? And also, if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter. So where's our goal? Where do we want to be? Where are we at? And what actions are we doing specifically to get us there? And I think that's where we really need to focus continuously, because things are going to change. We're going to have new inventions, new technologies for climate. So it's going to be something where we're going to continuously be pubbing and playing new things. But commuter benefits have existed for so long. Most people don't use them. They think about it for a tax benefit. Let's reframe that of how much impact that can be for the environment. Instead of just, oh, you can save money off of here. People are looking, my commute is not that much. I'm okay with it. But if it's saying, oh, this is the impact you're making during that commute, by doing this, that feels different. And people generally like to feel good.
No, that's absolutely spot on. I think even that last part you mentioned, we got that question a lot as well when we were talking to folks. Like, yeah, commutes are a part of it, and I'm thinking through that kind of grander picture. I've made this bold statement of sustainability. I need to do so much. This everything is part of it. And I think we get that question a lot. Like, what role does commute really have in that larger sustainability goal? So we know, you very technically, yes, we know scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. We know scope 3 stop category A, B. Like, we can understand it on paper, right? But in a day-to-day lifestyle, on a people-to-people level, what role does that have? And I think the point that you brought up again now, tracking and showing things, right? We talked about HR's role of, they're the facilitator, they're the awareness coach, they're the internal cheerleader for employees. For them having that sort of insight into saying, hey, just let me show you what impact your commutes have, or your small actions have, right? And you actually brought up you mentioned it in passing, but I thought it was a really important point. You mentioned things like even the swag that people are using, right? You talk about recyclable, gift bags, and like most swag we get, I don't know where most of the swag I get normally is, right? It disappears. So those
Swag
are
is
small
a great
things.
area. It's a great area. Because while it's small, it makes a huge impact to our environment. Are people actually using, the stuff that you're putting out there? That's another opportunity to donate. That's another opportunity to contribute to some other funds that are doing different things instead of the swag. And on top of that, who's your audience? Because if you're going to somebody who's really climate conscious, that's just newly employed, like that actually may not be the most welcoming experience for them. So this is also why I really tell you to think about the people you're employing, think about your mission and your vision and your value. What are you saying? Because if you're saying all of this great stuff and we contribute and do this, but yet you're sending me all this plastic stuff, you're sending me all this stuff that, is going to contribute negatively to the climate, but like we're really progressive with our climate policies. Like, what does that mean? It's a mixed message.
Doesn't match up.
So it definitely doesn't match up. But think about every conference that you go to. Think about like even the things that you get for awards or whatever the case may be, like printing, how often we just automatically do it because it's something we've done it so long. Like really questioning ourselves and asking, like, is this necessary? And I think those are going
Yeah.
to be really important parts. And also like, where do you want your brand? Because a lot of swag has logos, on it, and some of that stuff really ends up in the trash, and so like really thinking about that of, what's going to be impactful and what do I want my employees to feel when they either get this, that can change everything. And so I think it's just taking a minute for that on top of, if you do have a kitchen, your hybrid or whatever the case may be, like, do you have dishes? I mean, I will tell you one thing Casper did that I thought was fantastic when you first onboarded. They gave you reusable silverware, and they gave you a pouch for that and all like sustainable stuff. So we have them, we have mugs and things like that in the office, but that's how they welcomed us in. And this is your pair. You were responsible for it to keep your own. And so it's those little actions. I still have mine, much longer than I've given anything else probably, but it's those things. And that was my welcome. And so I say that in a space of, when you're gifting, be conscious about it. Don't just pick the vendor because it's easier, like also thinking it's a local vendor, like pollution, that's real, like where's your snack coming from, the transportation. And so like, there's just so many different elements where you can truly take a moment to think about this and be impactful in your gifting. And also like, what's your ICP for your employees?
Yeah. What's the most environment friendly gift or swag, Chinmay, that you guys have done? Because I know you have some really fun panda gear everywhere.
I mean, it's a good question, Shaurya. I think I would say, and I think I will have to echo to our core offering. I think our biggest gift, we of course offer Ridepanda as a benefit to Ridepanda
Yeah.
as well. And I think our biggest
Mm,
is a high quality, vetted, curated vehicle for each individual employee. Right. I have someone
yeah.
who takes at a company who takes a BART in San Francisco to go to work, so they can take the scooter to the BART to a mile and a half, and they take the BART all the way. Some folks like myself who lives in New York, I don't have a lot of space, so I have a foldable bike for me. I've had some folks who want to drop their kids to school before going to work, so they have a nice cargo bike. And I think that really counts, right? I think these can be expensive vehicles, $3,000-$4,000. You may not want to commit upfront to any of them. What about service? What about insurance? What about theft? There's so many other challenges you may foresee even committing to the lifestyle. And I think we as a business are trying to unpack a lot and remove as much as we can. And we see that as a success for Ridepanda employees, but we see that for a lot of other folks as well. So that I would say is the most climate friendly swag that
Like,
we offer. Given, as you said, Shaurya, earlier, right? Transportation is the number one cause of emissions in the US. Half of that happens through passenger cars. 60% of the car trips are in 0 to 5 miles nationwide. And if you look at our bigger cities like SF, New York, 70-80% of the car trips are actually 0 to 3 miles. That we can replace today with these sustainable small two wheels. And that is, what we see as the biggest gift.
that's good. I mean, maybe you should offer that not as a employee benefit, but as a swag. That'd be nice. Maybe see if you get scooters and bikes as swag for your employee onboarding. That's another new angle as environment friendly or conscious swag too.
Yeah.
Um, No, that's awesome. I think, I mean, at the core, the whole, SWAT discussion really, it's exactly what you're saying, Morgan. Like every little bit counts, and being really mindful about that at like a high level. I think we touched on this idea of people making grand targets and statements, but then, really kind of, you need to boil that down. And that needs to come inwards into action. It needs to touch everybody. It's not just leadership saying something, like our leader said this, there's a statement out there, but how does that affect our day to day, and how can it, be part of that entire picture, right? Like every job counts. It's all gonna go up to the same place. So I think that's very important all the way from onboarding stuff you get, set that up from day one. Like, yeah, we are environment conscious, not just when we're doing PR events or making a press release. Where, we care about sustainability and most things that where we can. And then you're kind of pulling that question in. Yeah, I think we have in the last few minutes. I think if there's any questions, folks have from the attendee list, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll see if we can get to them as well, and try to at least touch on them. We did get a couple other, we did some polls before to figure out what people were most interested in within this intersection of HR, sustainability, and even commuting or transportation. One thing that I think stood out, which would be really interesting to talk about, and this is definitely something that Morgan, I'm sure you'll have good thoughts on. Um, Prioritizing aspects of different things of culture, right? Like a team culture, an HR leader. There's a ton you need to do. Sustainability needs to come into the mix on this culture. This specific kind of questioning was around like return to office is a big thing that a lot of HR leaders are juggling. It's top of mind. There's a lot happening. Like return to office, just those three words actually have so much behind it that needs to go into force. And HR, people ops, workplace, everybody is involved. It's a cross dimensional problem that everyone is addressing. We're talking about things like, yeah, sustainability matters, and we made a statement, but how do I juggle that with the priority of right now we're just doing return to office? Like we have to worry about this. Like, are those mutually exclusive, or how does that intertwine?
I definitely think it intertwines. And this is kind of once again where I talk about the clarity in your messaging. If you're saying we really prioritize sustainability, but everybody needs to move back around this area and commute into work 5 times a week, what are we really valuing here? On top of that, let's not even speak about, the electricity that you're running. Let's not speak about, the use of the computers that are also in the building, the pollution that's coming in from different methods of transit, the wear and tear of the things that are also going on in the office. Are they using plates? Are they using dishes? Are they, like just that in a microcosm, I would love to see like the sustainability report for a day. Because if you're thinking about employees, 1% of what they can contribute and like double Xing that, you know what I'm saying? That's essentially what's happening when you're asking for these things. And I think, look, I could have a whole TED talk basically on, return to office and everything else like that. But I think that's where you need to get clear into your messaging of why are you doing this? And, what do you know about this? Are you sure? Like, have y'all thought about how you're contributing this? Are you changing and doing things for the lights? Are you changing and thinking about how you're using electricity in these use cases? Like something we've even learned with AI of just like how polluting and how much water just has to go to cool those systems. That's a big thing. And I don't think a lot of people are fully aware about some of those things. So it's what is our commitment? What are our decisions? I think the other thing is if people, once again, are returning to the office and doing this, what does this mean if we live in a city like Asheville and this happens? Like, this is once again where I would have you really question yourself. What does this mean if a climate event happens in that space that you just gathered everybody back to? Like that's something to consider. And I think we're very short-sighted on some of these things and when it comes down. And we as in not in HR, more founder-led, but I would definitely say like those are some of the decisions that you really need to be making. And I think that's also something you have to really clarify with your employees and let them know, hey, this is actually why we're doing this and we are aware. Because I do think you have to take an accountability and ownership on that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's a lot of external factors that are always affecting the day-to-day decisions that we're making, and especially as HR leaders, having to juggle this brand new phenomenon that we're going through with return to office and multiple waves of the return to office that we've been, experimenting with, I would say, right? Trying different things. But I think, yeah, you're spot on. Like, I think, it doesn't have to exist mutually exclusively. It has to be a cohesive part of the problem and cohesive part of the solutions that you're putting in place, right? So, return to office, whatever decisions happening for what that policy looks like should account for sustainability. If you're also saying that you care about sustainability, like you're saying, that needs to be part of the decision making, getting people back in, how that looks, whether you're using that opportunity to also kind of incorporate sustainable habits or influence people, tell them, hey, use bikes when you're coming back to the office now instead of what you were doing before, or let's find distribution, come to certain days you don't have to commute every day if you are driving. That also helps actually the environmental problem, not just the distributed kind of workforce problem. But yeah, I mean, and we see government coming in too. We've seen sometimes like the sustainability push is very heavily politicized as well, of course, and we've seen nice strings that are talking about kind of external pressure, like return to office is an external concept that we're all dealing with now as part of the changes of our trends. Legacy and sort of regulation is a big one, both for sustainability reporting. We've seen the SEC come in and really start to push a bit more accountability outside in, right, at the highest level. Let's start reporting, let's start mandating. We've all seen it in our transportation world. Chinmay and I have seen very closely also kind of commuter mandates coming in, post-pandemic, new regulation, new funding. A lot of incentive programs are coming in at the government, city level. We're seeing people really start to use that as a tool in their arsenal to also make decisions. And even, kind of selfishly, HR folks are also able to now use regulation and these other things as a crutch to be like, yeah, I mean, we're required to offer these benefits. Like we should set them up and be compliant, but also it helps us, do our kind of sustainable bit and get what we want to do as well internally and be true to our sort of mission there. I think, yeah, there's a couple of really quick things if you want to add. I think we're towards the end of this. We went a bit over. I know we started a little bit late and we doubled up, but it was a super nice conversation. I know this is just one small drop in the entire bucket of things that we do need to talk about and address in our combination of HR and sustainability. But really, really excited. I gotta have this conversation with you guys. Thanks, Chinmay and Morgan for joining us. If there's any last imparting bits you want to share with the folks, we're going to record this. We'll also share it with our broader community, and we're also going to prepare a little bit of sort of key takeaways and things that people can continue to think through. And this is just the initial dialogue, right? There's a lot more that needs to happen afterwards. But
yeah, only parting thoughts that I would give is like, look, this is big, it's new. Be graceful with yourself. We're all learning about things and the different impacts that our habits have. The habits have been accumulated throughout the years. I would say the last thing is think about this. You've worked with DEI policies and everything. It was big, but we had to make these incremental decisions of how we were impacting this and how we were adjusting this. I would say take the same approach. Think about where you want to be, think about where is ideal, and think about the little steps that you can do today. Question your automatic decisions and your frameworks that you utilize, and every decision going through that, is this contributing, yes or no, to either climate change or climate deprivation. And so I think when we can start thinking about that through all of our little small actions, that's when they compound, that's when they can make monumental changes and engage your employees, get their feedback, get their thoughts. They may already have some awesome ideas or doing things that you can utilize, and that's killer engagement because they're already bought in. So it's a hard thing, but you're not doing this alone. Bring people along with you. Think about your vendors, do your research, and RFPs, include this in them to see where they rank. So you can talk about how you're partnering with somebody that values sustainability as well.
Yeah, I mean, I will just add, and I think Morgan, you and Shaurya, you just covered it just now, but there is a bigger and bigger push to get folks back to office, and I think the pro case is it will lead to more collaboration, or it will lead to more productivity. TBD, the science on it, right? But like, if we are moving forward with that also means how do we, almost one out of two, if not more, employees say commute is the worst part of their day, right? Now, given that as a fact, now what are we doing about it? Right? How are we encouraging folks to do so in a flexible manner where they have more agency, in a more sustainable manner, Can we add an aspect of fun to that? Can we add access to some sort of wellness for that? Those are ethos that I think are not necessarily mutually exclusive. We can think about a solution that, that can connect with many of these values versus a single one. And each need, and this is where the role of HR is hard, because each need deliberate consideration and thoughtfulness, and also constant and continuous communication with the employees on what's working for them and what's not working for them.
Perfect. Amazingly well said. I think recap the two big points where we can't do this alone. We have to do this with everybody and together. And we need to talk more about it. We need to have that communication, open dialogue with each and every person at each and every level. So I'm glad that we were able to do a version of that dialogue today, get some of this conversation started and share some great thoughts that we're seeing on the front lines. And yeah, we're excited to thanks so much for joining us, and excited to do a few more of these as we get a chance to chat some more. But thanks so much, guys. It's really good having you guys. And thanks for everybody tuning in and watching this. And the rest of the folks will be able to get these same thoughts and conversations on the recording later.
Thanks for bearing with my technical difficulties. I appreciate it.
All good, all good. Perfect. All right. Have a good one, guys. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody. Bye.